Hey everyone, this is Tim Rodriguez with Orange County Emergency Services. Today we're going to briefly review how to use a Papr, powered air respirator. We'll start with what a Papr is and how it's used. A Papr would be like a replacement for our P100s, or if you've been using an N95. The device itself filters air, particularly in this case small particulates, similarly to like an N95 or a P100. It has a high efficiency filter inside of it that's capable of filtering very, very small particulates. And so this device actually provides a higher level of respiratory protection than a P100 or an N95. One big distinction between the two is that these devices don't require fit testing, which many of you are familiar with in the past, where you've had to annually get checked out and have paperwork filled out, and we pay for that. And so this is a more feasible device for the system. My understanding is that the entire system is moving towards this, and so this will become the standard for respiratory protection moving forward for all of our providers. These will be deployed into the system, or they may already be deployed if you're watching this in the future. There'll be 3 of these on each ambulance, and so when you go to a scene where you need respiratory protection, whatever that criteria might be, you would utilize a Papr instead of currently like a P100 or an N95. These devices would be for our staff who are trained in their use, and so that's what a Papr will be used for. Some examples would be if you went to a patient that had tuberculosis or something like that, and so you would want to don this device and then doff it after use and clean it and store it. So we're going to break down part of the components of a Papr, and then we'll put it on and we'll talk about maintenance and care and some long-term thoughts. So the device itself, the main part is called the motor blower, and different Paprs look differently, but most of them all have some sort of motor blower unit. This is a 3M, I think this is a TR300 Plus, which is kind of their most standard economical design. So this is the motor blower unit. It has a battery power source that plugs in at the bottom. We'll go through that in a minute, which powers air intake, which comes in through a filter, and the air inlets are right here. So air that's out in the environment is sucked in through this. It's pushed through a filter, which we can take off, and I'll show you. This is the filter. This is a filter cover. There's probably no reason to take this off yourself, especially on a daily basis. And when you're thinking about the components of a Papr, after cleaning, the filter itself is still dirty, so you never want to touch the filter without gloves on. Filters have a shelf life. They expire, and they expire based on use. So my understanding is that we have a policy that will govern the changing of filters, but that on an everyday basis, you don't have to worry about changing the filter. So there's really no reason to take this filter cover off. Filters are based on the type of protection that you want. And so the filters that we currently have, this model, is for high efficiency particulates. So respiratory, airborne diseases, those kinds of things. They do not work for things like fumes or gases. So these aren't typically used in a decon setting, and they wouldn't protect you from things that are not normal respiratory particulates, essentially. So you want to make sure that your filter matches what you're trying to use. These are also used in industry applications like metalworking and woodworking, where there's lots of particulates in the air. So you'll see these used in a lot of different industries, not just medical care. So the filter just slaps on. There's a release button right here for the filter cover, and it just snaps all into place. The battery at the bottom, these batteries have a little test indicator on them. As you can see, there's 5 bars. This one is down to 4 out of 5 bars. So you'll have charging stations somewhere in the county, and you can, when your battery gets a little low, you can go change it out. I'm sure that'll be announced some other time. The batteries typically, in my experience, if they're fully charged and they're running at full tilt, will last for about 8 hours. and over time their shelf life decreases. So you just want to make sure that you have enough battery. If you have a couple bars, you're going to be fine for a normal EMS call. If you were to get into a call where you're with a patient for 2-3 hours, you might consider the need to change out batteries or plug up. This Papr, you're not able to plug it directly into power. You can only use a battery. It doesn't have a cable that you can also directly plug into a wall like some models. But these batteries do last for a really long time. Cold and heat can also degrade battery performance. So if your battery is stored outside the ambulance and it's hot or really cold, you may not get as good performance out of the battery. So something to consider when you're checking it off, you do want to check and make sure that your batteries are charged. If you don't have a charger at the station, you may need to go swap them out. I wouldn't let them get too low, but you can be assured that if you have a couple bars, like, you'll make it through a call or two with that. If your battery were to die, you'd want to just step out of the environment and figure out another solution. The other parts of the motor blower, so you plug in your battery, you have a power button here, and when you push it, you have to kind of hold it on. You'll hear the motor blower kick in, so now you have a battery. It does an initial check, and you'll see some lights that kind of flash through. And then it'll give you a battery indicator on the top. So the battery, just like on the battery itself, it'll show you, 5 bars. This one has 4 currently. And then it has another thing here that's showing you your airflow indicator, and it's showing you how much power you've got going. You can increase that by holding this down one more time, and you'll get more airflow. So depending on the circumstance, you may want more airflow. Sometimes it's more comfortable, but with more airflow, it becomes more difficult to hear. We'll get into that in a few minutes. So air comes in through the inlet, it goes through a filter, and then it's pumped out the outlet, and this is what connects up to your headpiece. So I'm going to turn it back off. To turn it back off for now, we're going to hold down the power button, and it'll shut back down. That's how you turn it off. You have a belt on the back. It threads through 2 little slots on the sides, and it has these little belt loop things that kind of keep it in place. And when you put on a belt, it's a nice, easy, clean belt. You want it to sit kind of on the small of your back, or wherever is comfortable for you. One issue with this is when you're seated, you may have to swing it around to the side in order to kind of get your seatbelt on properly. Just do whatever is comfortable for you. People don't really wear it on their front. I guess you could, but I would probably just wear it on the small of your back. The straps are sometimes a little bit on the large side. You can kind of tuck them in or get them out of the way. And you just want to make sure that it's comfortable because you'll be wearing it for a while. It's not very heavy. The device itself, this is kind of the brains of it. This part is the most expensive part. They're on the market maybe $600 to $1,000 each. And so you want to take good care of this. They're not very durable. They have little break points on them, like where the belts come in. So you just want to be careful with this and not drop it. It's not ruggedized. It's not meant to be thrown around. So that's why it's important to have a belt that's properly working so that you're not slinging it around or it's not falling off of you. The Paprs have been labeled, and so they each have a number that will correspond to your operative IQ checkoff. So when you come in for your shift, you go through operative IQ. When it prompts you, just put in your Paprs. They want to make sure they know where those are located. So we've talked about belts, we've talked about batteries, we've talked about motor blowers. We've also got a breathing tube. This device connects the outlet up to your head cover. It's expandable, it contracts. It has on one end a not quick connect connection that plugs into the Papr itself, and it goes in, and then you have to turn it, and then you'll feel it lock in. It's very self-intuitive. This is the most common breaking point on a Papr, is this connection right here. So I would not force it, I would be gentle. This is the most common place where components break. The hose itself is much cheaper than the motor blower, but they're still about $100, so take care when connecting these parts. The other end connects to your head covering. This is the current style of head covering that we've purchased. There's many different styles. You'll see some that come all the way down that encapsulate into a suit. They have some that are even less covering than this. But the back end of the head covering will have some sort of quick connect that will just plug right into the breathing tube. And you'll just feel them snugly, they don't come apart. When you're inspecting a unit before you use it, you want to make sure that all these connections work really well, because otherwise it's just time to replace them. And then you have a head covering, so you have some sort of visual field. This one covers your chin and your face, but it leaves your ears exposed, and it comes around the back of the head. It has inside of it, it has a kind of a molding, a plastic piece of trim that goes around your forehead. It kind of fits to your head and gives you a little more support on the top of your head to keep it from falling forward or tilting back. So you'll want to adjust that. My understanding is that everybody will be issued their own head cover. So one recommendation I would have is to make sure you put it on, when you first get issued one, it'll have film over the clear plastic front, so you want to take that off. And then you want to make sure that it's not damaged, it doesn't have big holes that can leak air in it. And then I would also, my recommendation is to mark your head cover so that your head cover will look exactly like everybody else's, and then when you clean them, they'll all be sitting next to each other and you won't know what's yours. So I would put a little sticker or something with your initials on it, just so that you know which head cover is yours. You can put it on the inside or the outside, whatever works. So that's the head cover. We'll put all this stuff on, but it'll be harder for me to hear and for you to hear me when I do. So I'll demonstrate that a little bit later. So the concept is that the air gets pushed up to the head cover, and then it's being supplied around the back of the head, kind of over the top of your head. And you don't need fit testing for this, because it doesn't matter whether or not you have a good seal. You have to have a little bit of a seal, but it's not an airtight seal that goes like around your chin. The concept is this provides positive pressure, and so as long as you have good airflow, that airflow is pushing everything out around your face, your mouth, your nose, your eyes, and nothing is coming in. So as long as you maintain that positive pressure environment within the hood, that you're protected. And so you don't have to have a good fit all the way around. You'll notice that when you put it on, you can hear air leaking around some of the edges of it, and these hoods have an elastic band that kind of wraps around it. And so you might hear air leaking just depending on how your face sits within the hood. You might hear air leaking around the ears or around the chin, and that's normal because that air has to escape somewhere. As long as air is not coming in, then you're good. So as long as you maintain that positive pressure environment, then you're good. When you're inspecting a hood, you want to make sure that you don't have deterioration of the elastic, there's not any holes or cracks from use or wear. When you're storing it, something to keep in mind, this is your hood, so you want to take care of it. I believe they're providing boxes to keep them in, and so you'll want to make sure that you kind of bundle everything up, and then you can feel the natural way that the clear plastic front rolls up, and you just want to secure that in your box like that. If you roll it the other way, you're going to end up, it's kind of against the grain, you'll end up fracturing the front of your seal. So if you notice any tears, you notice the elastics starting to wear out, or the head covering isn't fitting well, and you can feel massive air leaks, it's time to replace your head cover. These only have a certain amount of use left in them. Sometimes you'll notice staining. If you're wearing like makeup or anything in your hair, that can stain the hood. As long as you're still able to wipe it and it's intact, it's still good for use. I wore one a lot. It would get sweaty, and they end up getting like sweat stains on them essentially. And so that's totally normal as long as it's still physically intact. But at a certain point, it is time to change it out. One thing to consider is when you're cleaning it, if you use certain types of wipes, they'll leave a big residue on the front. So keeping the glass or the clear plastic clear is important as well. It'll make your experience using it a lot easier. So that's that. We'll talk through real quick before use how you want to check it out, make sure that it's functioning properly. Somewhere in the packaging, it'll include this device. It's a little ball with a tube inside of it. And you'll put this into the outlet where the air is coming out of the motor blower, and you can check the amount of airflow you have. It's very simple to use. The point of this is to make sure that you have enough airflow coming into the hood to adequately protect you. So they recommend doing this. You could do it in your daily check, or you could do it right before use. The problem with doing it right before use is you might identify a problem, and then you might not be able to solve it. So the two things that typically prevent this from successfully passing are a low battery, not enough power, or the filter's full and it's clogged. Those typically are never issues, and I've never seen one of these not pass. That's more common in environments with like heavy dust that just naturally comes into the filter. So maybe during pollen season you might experience this. But to do this, you disconnect the hose and you just insert this end of it into the outlet and you power it on. And it'll run through its initial checks, and you can see the ball came all the way to the top, which means you've passed. And that's all you've got to do for it. The other alarm check you can do is you can check if there's an occlusion of the line, it'll alarm. So if you take your hand, or gloved hand, or whatever you want to do, and just stick it over, if it's on, it'll give you an audible alarm. You'll hear it revving up, and then it'll start to have a red light. And then at a certain point, it's been trying to push air out, and it can't clear it, and it'll give you an alarm. So if you were wearing a Papr and this goes off, you should probably remove yourself from the environment you're in, take off your Papr, and then troubleshoot the issue. Some things that could cause this would be a kinking of your tubing, which prevents airflow from getting out, or you've kinked off your hood. And I think it'll resolve itself once it figures it out. But you can hear the engine revving itself up, trying to deliver more airflow. And then it resolved itself. That was without me touching anything. So I would do those two things probably in the morning. I just turn it back off because it's quite loud. So those are your two daily checks, your like obstruction check, and then your airflow indicator check. If you don't have one of these in your truck's PPE box or your Papr box, you should probably ask for one. Otherwise you won't be able to check that. And if it doesn't pass for some reason, try to troubleshoot that, charge your batteries, look at the filter. If the filter looks really clogged up, it's definitely time to change it if that's not already been done. Let's see. We talked about all the parts. So let's put it on. So we're going to assemble it. It comes out of the box. You can go ahead and make sure the belt fits. I've already done that on this one. We're going to connect all the parts. If this is your first time putting one on, it's probably a good idea to do this with somebody so they can kind of check you and help you and make sure everything looks like it's on correctly. But if you're doing it by yourself, it's very easy to do. You just connect the tubing. You want to make sure everything's locked in place, all your connections are good. You visually inspected the unit, there's no damage or cracks. You can go ahead and turn it on. There's no harm in turning it on early. These devices are designed to run for a really long time, so you've got good airflow coming out of the tubing. There's no piece of crumpled up paper or sandy wipe stuck inside of it. And then you get your quick connect on the back of the hood. And then what I like to do is I like to put it on, and then I'll just put the head covering over the top. So you got it on the small of your back. And then it goes over your shoulder. And then the strategy for this is it should be clean. So when you're putting it on, follow our donning procedure. But the point is that when you're putting it on, it's not a contaminated device. It's not dirty. It's not been in a dirty environment yet. So you can get it on however you want to get it on. If you already have your gown on or what other PPE you have, as long as all of that is clean and you're not using dirty gloves to touch your face and put this on and touch it all with your dirty hands, then you're good. But if you consider yourself to be dirty, I would take off dirty gloves, wash your hands, put hand sanding on, put on clean gloves, and then apply the device. So the idea is here, you're kind of touching around your face, so you want to make sure that your hands and your, everything's clean when you're putting it on, And then when you're taking it off, you're assuming that the device itself is dirty, your hands are dirty, and you don't want to get those around your face, your face, eyes, mouth, nose, that kind of thing. So this device, it's just going to hook under the chin, and then it's going to go over the top. And so this is what it'll look like once you put it on. This model, like I said, leaves your ears exposed. This is a side view. You should have a good amount of poof on the top of your head, and that helps you know that you have good airflow. If this was flat, that means you're not getting good airflow. You'll probably also get an alarm from the Papr itself. You can notice that I'm able to wear my glasses quite comfortably with the device on. If you have good airflow, your glasses will not fog up. And if you don't wear glasses, if you get fog up on your visor, your clear opening, that means you also don't have good airflow. So that could mean that something's obstructing the air coming in the back. I've seen that with ponytails that are so voluminous that they obstruct airflow in the back and it's not able to get over the top. So one thing to consider, if you have long hair, how are you going to secure it and make it kind of fit within, or pull it tight down below? And as long as there's good airflow over the top, you're protected. So you could do like a low ponytail. I don't have long hair, but you could do a low ponytail or something that gets your hair out of the way and doesn't prevent that airflow coming over the top. Right here, there's a lot of times you'll get airflow coming out because your ears don't fit too well right there, and the elastic band isn't pulling the visor up tight enough. One solution, if you're not able to really hear someone, is you can kind of pull down a little bit and get a little more tension, and then you can hear. So if you're talking to someone you can't hear, rather than take the device off, you can just take your glove and kind of pull it down a little bit, and you might be able to hear better in one ear. This is one of the downsides of the Papr, is being able to hear while you're wearing it, because it's constantly pushing that airflow. And so more airflow means it's louder, which means it's harder to hear. But you should know that you are probably very well understood by others because people can hear you at a normal speaking volume. So if you notice me start yelling when I put the Papr on, it's just because I'm hearing a lot of noise in my ears right now. This is also good because you can use your stethoscope. So you can apply your stethoscope, you can do your work, you can put your stethoscope away, you don't have to take the whole Papr hood off, and it's easier to use a stethoscope. So I think this is probably the best model for EMS and what we do. Some considerations when you're wearing a Papr: if you sit down and you put a seatbelt on, the Papr unit might not be able to get a lot of inlet air, especially if you're completely seated. So you might want to consider moving a Papr to the side, or even kind of taking it off and setting it on a shelf next to you. The problem is if you suddenly have to get up, you got to put the belt back on, it can be kind of cumbersome. So consider how you yourself will wear one during transport. Something to consider is that if you're driving, you should not be wearing a Papr. So if you are the person that's going to be doing the driving, you want to doff your Papr and then get in the driver's seat. And then you can resume wearing your Papr once you make patient contact again at the destination. I'm going to take the device off. What I would recommend when doffing, is to make sure your hands are clean, you're out of the environment, and that if you had a gown on over the device, you want to shed that first, re-clean your hands, basically get to a point where you have clean hands with new gloves, and then you're going to take the head cover off, pull up away from your face, and you can just set it on a counter somewhere. And then now you can take the belt off. The whole device is still running at this point, and you can just set it down, right? And now you can shut it off. Okay, and then now you can take your gloves off, you can go wash your hands, you can go do whatever you're doing, and then when you're ready to clean the device, it's just sitting there, it's dirty, and so how do you clean the device? What I like to do is put on some clean gloves. You need a little bit of space, and you can use wipes. So whatever our approved wipes are probably appropriate for this device. In the past, I've always used purple wipes. We don't stock purple wipes. So I know purple wipes do a good job of cleaning and not leaving residue, which can be really frustrating. Because like I said, this clear thing can be degraded and it can be streaked if you don't use the right product. You can use bleach wipes on these if you needed to. However, I know bleach for a fact will leave a giant residue on the top. So I wouldn't recommend routinely using bleach. But if you can get some sanding wipes, or the current wipes that we're ordering would probably be just fine. Just make sure they're not leaving a big streak on the front of your mask. Or you can get some glass cleaner later and go back over it. You want to thoroughly wipe down the exterior of this. You want to wipe down breathing tubing. You don't have to run anything through the breathing tubing, just get the outside of it, because in theory only clean air is coming through the breathing tube. So the inside of the breathing tube itself should be clean. There is a device and a process for deep cleaning the inside of it. We don't regularly provide those parts, and it requires a solution and a connector and all this stuff, so we don't do that. So you want to take everything apart. You want to thoroughly wipe down the exterior of this device, including the battery pack. You can leave it all connected. You want to clean the belt. You want to try to get into all the parts of the belt. This is an easy clean belt, so it's very easy to clean. You want to make sure that your battery still has enough battery life, or you want to consider going to go change it out, get a fresh battery. And then a big key is you want to let everything thoroughly dry before you put it back into the container, because you don't want to pull your mask out and it's just still all wet, and you want to let everything dry. So I like to, one of my strategies is I like to hang it up somewhere and let it get good airflow while I'm finishing up my chart, restocking the rest of the ambulance. And so I like to do this process early so that it can dry, and then as soon as we clear the hospital, I'm ready to go again. But it does take a few minutes, especially if you have 3 Paprs. I recommend just sitting them all out, doing them all at once, and then let them dry, go make up your stretcher, clean everything else, and then you can get back in service more efficiently. Let's see. I think that's about it. So if you have any questions, reach out to someone. It's better to ask, and like I said earlier, I recommend, if this is the first time you're using one, if you don't understand, take a few minutes and figure it out. This is important, it protects you. And so if you're not sure, ask a buddy, call a supervisor, call an FTO, call someone that can help you in the real time kind of troubleshoot the device. But until you gain comfort, work with a buddy to make sure that you're properly protected when using the device. And then this will become something, once you've used it a few times, it'll be very easy to just use. You won't have to think about it as much. So thank you very much. I appreciate everyone.